a teenager. There were three. Number one, carrying a purse. We did that. Well, not to school, but certainly to some places after school. Check. Number two, wearing lipstick. We did that too. Well, certainly not to school, and only at Colleen's because my mother would kill me. Check. And three, wearing an ID bracelet with your name on the top and your boyfriend's picture in the locket. And we didn't have those yet, but we had a plan. And Colleen and I were schemers extraordinaire. We were fast best friends, and we were inseparable. We had formed kind of a symbiotic relationship when it came to schemes and scams. I was the visionary, and Colleen was the executor. For instance, I wrote plays. Colleen coerced our parents into paying 25 cents a piece to watching the performance and got them to buy their own homemade cookies back from us at intermission. So we were pretty confident that we would be able to obtain the coveted bracelets. Because after all, Christmas was right around the corner, and being the youngest children in our family, we pretty much got whatever we wanted for Christmas. Now this year, this particular goal of ours was going to be a little bit harder because Christmas was actually 5 days away, and we would have to try just a little bit harder to get one more present piled on under the tree. Colleen used crocodile tears, and I simply told my mother that Colleen was getting a bracelet and I had to have one. So we both unwrapped our bracelets under the tree, and that afternoon we gathered at Colleen's to gloat over our strategic success. We were quite happy until all of a sudden we realized that we were encountering what seemed to us an overarching obstacle. How do we get the boyfriend picture inside the locket? Well, the good news was we both had a boyfriend, Herb Monk. Now, there was no love triangle here, no jealousy, no hatred, because Herb Monk did not know that he was our boyfriend, which presented a little bit of a problem in getting his picture inside the bracelet. The other thing that we were concerned about was, how do you get a headshot of somebody inside a little tiny locket? Then, of course, I had a great idea. I said, here's what we do. We need a big group shot with Herb in it. And then all we have to do is trim him out and put his picture inside the locket. Ta-da! Well, I said, you know what we'll have to do? We'll have to take our own group picture. Colleen, you take a camera rather, to school right after vacation and tell Mrs. Hammond, who is our teacher, that you got it for Christmas and that we would like your first picture out of this new camera to be of her class. She'll love it. Well, we thought that was a great idea, and so did I. I mean, I thought it was wonderful, brilliant. Until the night before we were to go back from Christmas vacation. I woke up, I'm kind of a worrier, so I woke up with this nagging thought, what if Mrs. Hammond remembers our arithmetic scheme? You see, a few weeks earlier, we hated doing math, and we were darn sick of doing multiplication and long division every single night for homework. And we were sitting in Colleen's room one night with our homework in front of us. And I said, Colleen, this is not going to do. We have got to get somebody to do our math for us. About that time, we heard Colleen's dad whistling his way up the stairs. He adored us. We looked at each other and went, yeah. Pretty soon the door opened and he said, hey, little cuties, what's up? And Colleen said, Dad, you're just in time. We all know that you're a lot smarter than Mom, and here's your chance to prove it. And then she explained to him this contest in which he would be pitted against her mother doing certain math problems. Well, for the next week, every single night, Slim, and only Slim, did our math homework. It went on for a week, maybe a week and a half, until one day we were called in by Mrs. Hammond. Girls, I happen to notice that every day you get the same wrong answers on your math homework. How do you explain that? Colleen did not miss a beat. She said, well, we care a lot about improving our math skills, and so what we do is we pick out the hardest problems and we do those together. Well, we didn't get in trouble, but we don't really think that she bought that. So I knew that we would enter this new scam with a cloud of suspicion over our head. But I didn't say anything to Colleen because I didn't want to blow it, as she pulled a camera off the top shelf of her parents' closet and put it in a bag, and we headed off to school. Now I also knew that Mrs. Hammond was going to be the gatekeeper on this scheme, and she could make or break it. And she was a tough old bird. She drove to school every day in this old battered green Chevy pickup. She had a severe haircut. She wore big, black, sensible shoes, and we were sure that when she went home at night after school, you know, she chopped wood and bucked a few bales of hay before dinner. She almost never smiled. And she wasn't smiling when Colleen and I approached her desk after lunch that first day back. I stood back while Colleen walked up, and I watched Colleen pull this old, battered, kind of scratched, dusty brownie box camera out of the bag. And I thought, oh no, she's never going to buy this. But Colleen was smiling and yakking away with the confidence of a professional con man. And pretty soon, Mrs. Hammond stood up and she looked at the class with almost a smile on her face, and she said, class, I'd like you to come forward. Colleen got a camera for Christmas, and she is going to take our class picture. And so for the next 20 minutes, Mrs. Hammond jostled and jiggled people around at the front of the room so we were all in view, and Colleen snapped a single picture. We giggled and gloated all the way home about how we pulled one off on Mrs. Hammond and how we were going to get our bracelets and our picture. And we got home that night, and her dad, Slim, popped open the camera to take the film up. He looked puzzled. He said, was there supposed to be film in this camera? It's empty. Epilogue. Well, we never did get Herb's picture in our bracelets. And somehow we managed to become teenagers and adults without it. Colleen and I are still fast friends. And we still giggle about that incident and how we were able to pull that story off on Mrs. Hammond. But I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if she believed it at all. Maybe she was just kind of getting a kick out of watching two self-centered little girls see the world through a lens that actually involved other people. And that definitely would be a milestone. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. You know, Janice is cursed. I forgot to press start on the camera when she was performing at our Art of the Storyslam for the first, so we lost like the first 30 seconds of her story. So anyway, you and cameras, Janice. Yeah.
The next teller is Bella.
Bella, okay, come on up, Bella. So this is a very special treat. Bella was here, I think it might have even been our first slam, and I asked him to come back and tell this story because it's very fitting for Welcoming Week. He came to this country a long time ago, and he's going to tell you a little bit about that. And, you know, it's all about opening doors, not building walls, and I think you'll see why.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, I think that we go. Good evening. My name is Bela Reiner, and I'm one of those that love to talk, love to have friends, maybe talk a lot, and because of that, many people ask me, where are you from? say from Beaverton. Anyway, originally I born in Budapest, Hungary. I was living there until I was 23, and then I immigrated to the United States. And this immigration was something very special, and shortly but very interestingly, I think I would like to talk about it. When we arrived as refugees from communist Hungary, we arrived in Vienna, and we went to a sort of immigration camp and talked with many people. It was a very nice situation. And then my wife, Mary, was already pregnant and we're expecting my first baby. And then we heard that the Austrians would, if a lady is 7 months pregnant, the Austrians want them to live until a baby born and a baby became an Austrian citizen. And this was quite difficult for us because we didn't want to stay in Austria. We lived there pretty good, we were happy there, but we didn't want to live over there. So I had a sponsor in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I wrote to the sponsor that, dear Mr. Harkema, we would like to come out somehow faster if it's possible. I said, I don't know what is possible, what is not, but if you could do anything for us, certainly we will appreciate if we get to America. And lo and behold, very quickly, in June 1957, we went to the American consulate in Vienna and got the immigration papers to Grand Rapids, Michigan. When we came to Grand Rapids, I have a lot of stories, of course, to tell you from the very beginning to a lot of things happened. And we were very happy there. And then in September 1957, my daughter born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and became certainly an American citizen. And we were very happy so far. Then when she was about 2 months old, Mr. Harkema, my sponsor, asked my wife Mary and myself and the baby to go to the person that actually helped very much for us to come to this country. And he was a representative, a U.S. representative in Michigan by the name of Gerald Ford. And we went to visit his office, and of course didn't speak English, or very little, and but tried as much as we could. And my sponsor was, telling Mr. Ford a few things about us, and he was very jovial. He picked up my little 2-month-old baby and sort of held it in his hand and everything, and it was a very, very nice visit. He was a pretty big man, and so many words as I could spoke, and my wife too, we tried to talk with him. And then very nicely and happily, we shook hands with him, and then we left his office. And then we were walking out, and I don't know, maybe we were something like 25, 30 feet. All of a sudden, he's coming after us, and he yells, Bela, Mary, you left something in my office. It was a little brown bag. And I told my wife in my language, I said, I don't know, maybe we're going to get some heat from him. So he can give us a little brown bag. And I thought, well, maybe I open it quickly to see what's in it. And I opened it, and you don't believe it. It was a diaper of my daughter, because my wife changed the diaper in his office and put him in that little brown bag. So, boy, we were terribly embarrassed. Well, anyway, that was that. But about 4 years later, he became the President of the United States. And, I thought that I did talk with him before he was President of the United States, so I thought I'd write him a letter. And I asked Blaine, and he said I could read that letter, so I would read that letter, if I may. That letter was dated in March 25, 1956, in North Bend, Colorado. President, White House, blah, blah. My dear Mr. President, I have great hope that this letter will be one of a few of the thousands that will pass through your secretary and will reach you personally. I'm sure that in spite of your countless acquaintances in the past 19 years, you are still remembering me and my family. I am Béla Reiner, a Hungarian refugee who came to this country, that is to Grand Rapids, Michigan, in the summer of 1957. You and my family met personally in your trailer office in Wyoming Park that year, and we thanked you in quite a bit broken English for your actions that helped us to reside in this wonderful United States. I may recall a small episode that you brought my daughter's diaper after us when we accidentally left it in your trailer because we were so very excited. Excited is the word. My daughter Susan, she has born in Grand Rapids in the same year as your Susan, born in Grand Rapids, 3 weeks apart. And my daughter still boasts about this diaper thing ever since. So, the letter went, and we keep talking and everything else was fine. All of a sudden, there's a mail. Beautiful letter, the White House. Stamp is United States, 13-cent stamp. Washington, D.C., April 2nd, 1976. And it says, the White House, of course, White House and beautiful watermark, March 31st, 1976. Dear Béla, it is wonderful to hear from you and know that all goes well with you and your family. Yes, I recall your excitement when you first came to the United States and came to my office, and I have pleasant memories of other meetings with you over the years since 1957. My Susan, you'll be pleased to know that your Susan speaks of her with warmth. With kind personal regards and appreciation for your continuing support and encouragement, sincerely, Jerry. So, that is really a very important part of my life. And some time ago, I told this to Blaine, and he said, well, you know, you love to talk. You already been once here before. So why don't you just come by and tell the story again? So that was my story. Thank you. I would like to tell you something that I'm writing up. Well, that's very short. I wrote a book, and because I born in May 28, 1934, there was a quintuplets in Canada, born in the very same year and the very same day. At that time, they were, of course, you know, sort of world famous, and even today, you know, there's a lot of books and so forth. So I wrote a book, and the title of my book is The Sixth of the Quintuplets. And I have that book. I will give it to Blaine, see what he thinks. But this is certainly, this story I told you about President Ford is in it. And there's plenty more stories, so if I will have a chance, come again, I'll just read from my book. Thank you again.
I knew you would all want to hear that. Thanks for coming back, Val. You know you're welcome anytime. So, how many tellers do we have left, and are we going to be able to get them all in?
We have 5 tellers left.
Okay. Who's next?
Next one is Aaron.
Aaron. Oh, come on up, Aaron. This is the father of the baby.
Good evening. When I was 20 years old, I was baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Oh yeah, sorry. I'm not going to use the stand anymore. When I was 20 years old, I was baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It was a very, very big change for me religiously. And 2 weeks later, I moved 3 states away to college. I went to Montana State University. I grew up around here. And I didn't know anyone out there. I went to school there almost on a whim, trying to improve myself. I went to study film. And when I was out there, it's not out there, but sort of becoming more religious, becoming a Christian, I sort of evolved this sense of right and wrong and the importance of making sure that all of my sins were properly repented for, that I would be clean before God. And so I was trying very hard to make sure that anytime I did something wrong, I was always, going through this process of repentance, going through this effort. I hope this doesn't sound too much like a sermon. I'm getting to the interesting part of the story, I promise. But like I would confess my sin and I would, apologize for it and promise never to do it again. Okay, so I met this girl who lived on the floor, I don't know, a couple floors above me, I think. And she was a very vibrant young woman, and I liked spending time around her. And I don't remember quite how we got there. But one night she says to me and some other people, "I want a mile 4 marker." And I said, "What is that?" Because I kind of had an idea, like, okay, a mile 4 marker, like the sign on the side of the road that says 4 before you get to a town or something. And she said, "Yeah, I want a mile 4 marker. I've always wanted a mile 4 marker." And I said, okay, and we piled into a car, and we drove 4 miles outside of Bozeman, Montana. I want to say 4 miles north of Bozeman, Montana, but I'm not really sure which direction we went. And we had a socket wrench, and it turns out that mile 4 markers are not well secured to the posts that they're on. And we stole a mile 4 marker. And we drove back, and she put it up in her dorm room. And for the next couple of months, every once in a while, there's this little grain, this little thing in the back of my head. "You stole a mile 4 marker." And I did not think that this was, like the voice of God or anything. It was just my conscience, just this, as I said, this perhaps over-evolved sense of right and wrong saying, "You stole a mile 4 marker. You need to correct that." And so one night, I had made friends with this guy on the 10th floor named Sean. Sean was a little bit older than me. I think he was 21. I was 20 at the time. I think I said that. And Sean had a van. So we're at this party just down at the bottom, like at the bottom floor of our dorm building. And it's kind of, it's sort of a late-ish night party. I think it goes from, I don't know, probably 7 to midnight or something like that. And having fun, having a good time. It gets to be, midnight, party's shutting down, and since we're, good kids, I guess, we're all helping clean up. And I turn to Sean and I say, "Sean, I need a favor." I need someone to take me out 4 miles outside of town so we can return this mile 4 marker, because it's really burdening my conscience. And he looks at me and he says, okay. And so I walk over to this girl, Lori, and I say, Lori, we have to take back the mile 4 marker. This is really a burden on my conscience. And she says, yeah, it's been kind of bugging me too. And she sort of said it in the way that you say it when you're like, I'm going to agree with you, but quite frankly, I don't care. And so we drive out. And so it's me, it's Sean, it's Lori, and there's one other guy who's a good friend that unfortunately I don't remember the name of. And we drive out there, and we're in a panic. We are deeply concerned that we're going to be putting this mile 4 marker back on the post, and a police officer is going to come by and he's going to think we're taking the mile 4 marker off of the post. So we're panicked, we're shaking, we're desperately trying to bolt this thing back on. I don't think we did a very good job. I think we got the screws on, the nuts on, and it just kind of hung there. And we pile back into the car and we drive back. So we get back, and I'm feeling a little bit better about myself, but I realize that there's this one more step, this one further step that I gotta do to really be resolved of this. And that step is I need to go, well, okay, so there are 2 things. First thing is I need to go talk to my bishop, and I need to confess. I need to let him know I've done this thing and find out what's necessary for me to be totally resolved of this sin. The second thing is you're supposed to apologize or make restitution with the party you have wronged. And I'm thinking, I have wronged the people of the state of Montana. How do I make restitution for this? So I sit down with my bishop, and I'm really nervous. And I explained to him the story. I said, I stole this mile 4 marker. I've taken it back. I put it back. I've made right that wrong. I take a deep breath, and I say, do I need to talk to the police about this? And he looks back at me. He takes a deep breath. And I'm thinking, oh boy, here it comes. And he says, I don't think that will be necessary. As far as I know, the statute of limitations has run out. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. I think your child's too young to really understand what you did, so you should be okay. You just borrowed the marker. You took it back. Who's next, Dan?
The next color is Ahan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Ihan? Ihan, come. Are we saying it right? Come on up. You can correct us if we're not.
Yeah, correct.
You want the mic stand?
So when I think of the word new horizons, I always think of like a new beginning or something. So this story is kind of like a miniature version of my life so far. So hope it doesn't get too boring. So I never lived in Oregon for all of my life. I've lived in Oregon for such a long time, it truly feels like I've lived there for, it should be my only home, but it wasn't. I was born in El Paso, Texas, in what you would call Texas, the Wild Wild West. But in El Paso, the western side of Texas, not many things were really wild. But nevertheless, but even before I was born, my parents first immigrated to America in hopes of getting a good job, a good degree, a good kid, and a good future. at the same time, they had to learn English and they had to get a job and go to college and learn all this stuff about America. This is the first new beginning mentioned in this story. Within 1 year of them moving to America, I was born. This is the second new beginning mentioned. Living my early life as in a standard family, my life was pretty average. Learning my ABCs, learning to count, watching cartoons on TV, and your occasional temper tantrum, whining and screaming. You know, it's the usual stuff. As I grew up, I learned to do things more independently, and such as going to school, making friends, and paying attention in preschool. And it wasn't until a few years later, when another new beginning hit, my parents decided it would be a good idea to have yet another kid, my little brother. This is the third new beginning mentioned. As you can see, there's many new beginnings being mentioned. So I was pretty excited to experience some extreme responsibilities, but it turns out to come with a few drawbacks. It wasn't until I turned 6 when another new beginning hit. It was time to move away from El Paso, Texas, the only home I ever knew, to here, Oregon. And on the road trip here, I didn't feel much emotion. I was just excited to be at a new place, I guess. But then when I got there, I knew something was wrong. I had to start completely over. I had to make new friends. I had to adjust to a new, colder environment. And worst of all, I had to go back to school. Oh, and I almost forgot, this is the fourth new beginning being mentioned. This is the last, but definitely not the least. During the 3rd grade, my parents decided it would be a good idea to suddenly ramp up my studies by a lot. Because of this, I studied a whole lot more and paid more attention in class. And because of this, I ended up among the top 15 students in the 4th and 5th grade. Not only that, but in 4th grade, I was enrolled into a special program that pushed my classes in middle school up by 2 grades. Man, that pushed my limits. But after I finished 5th grade, it was time for yet another new beginning, middle school. But wait, you thought that last new beginning was the last one, didn't you? You guys are so gullible. Anyway, I was excited to be in middle school and be part of the community yet again, and keep my studies as high as possible. And to this day, I'm still stuck in middle school, still doing endless amounts of homework. But I still think about those new beginnings and how we got through them. And I want you to remember that with every new beginning, it will end, and another one will follow suit. Thank you.
Thank you. You know what happens after you're done with school, don't you? You gotta get a job. That's what I keep telling my senior. Who's next, Ann?
Patrick.
Patrick. Come on up. What's that?
I will use the stage.
Okay.
In the middle of December in 1944, the war was going very badly for the Germans on the Western Front. The Americans and the Allied forces had recaptured all of France. They were now in the northeastern part of France, in the Belgian area. But the Germans decided that in one last effort to try to win the war, they would launch a massive counterattack. There would be a large 3-week battle, which turned what's called the Battle of the Bulge. During this 3 weeks' time, over 19,000 American soldiers were killed, and